Doing doubles is far more difficult than doing singles, but on the other hand, it also puts one in a position to have twice as much fun. This quote could actually make you think of someone talking about sports. Sadly, its meaning is way darker and sicker. It comes from convicted necrophilic double murderer, abductor, suspected serial killer, hebephile, ephebephile, and cannibal. Additionally, he also used to be Ted Bundy's cellmate and was even admired by him, known as the Killer Cop or the Hangman. Hello everyone, I'm Black Bunny. Today let's talk about Gerard Schaefer. On July 21, 1972, Schaefer pulled off his first known murder attempt. Abusing his authority as a police officer, he convinced the hitchhikers Pamela Wells and Nancy Trotter that hitchhiking was illegal in the county, which it wasn't. He drove them to a halfway house at which they lived and promised to drive them to the beach the next day. When they were in his car then, he drove them into the swamp and tied them to a tree at gunpoint. Just afterwards, he got a call on his police radio and had to leave tied up. While he was gone, the girls managed to break free and run to the nearest police station, which ironically turned out to be the station at which Schaefer worked. When Schaefer returned to the tree and found them gone, he called his boss, Sheriff Crowder, and said, "I've done something foolish. You're gonna be mad at me." When Crowder found out about what his deputy had done, he promptly fired Schaefer and arrested him for unlawful imprisonment and aggravated assault. He made a plea bargain and was sentenced to a year in prison with the possibility of being released after 6 months. 2 months after posting bail, he abducted 2 more female hitchhikers, Susan Place and Georgia Jessup, killed them the same way he had intended to kill Wells and Trotter, and buried their bodies. When the remains were found, Schaefer was sent to prison. The similarities between their murder and Schaefer's attempted murder were enough to secure a warrant for his mother's house, where he and his wife lived. Inside they found, as well as a number of graphic, disturbing short stories about murder written by Schaefer. Some were written in jail, and a total of 11 guns and 13 knives, a mountain of evidence implicating Schaefer in the disappearances of over 30 women in the area spanning many years. He had half-baked explanations for all of it, such as having found the items, being given them as gifts, or having bought them elsewhere. He claimed that the teeth had been planted by an ex-roommate who, according to Schaefer, privately confessed to the murder. The roommate in question was interviewed by police and cleared as a suspect. What's beneath this tremendous viciousness? Let's go through his life first. Gerard Schaefer was born on March 25, 1946 in Wisconsin and raised in Atlanta. He was the eldest of 3 children. Gerard did not get along with his father, who was a drinker and a womanizer. Gerard believed that both his parents favored his sister over him. He later described himself as the illegitimate product of a forced marriage. Schaefer proved to be disturbed when he was young. He would steal women's underwear, tie himself up to a tree, struggle to get free, and get excited sexually in the process. He would later do something to hurt himself and fantasize about hurting other people, women in particular. In 1967, Schaefer earned an associate degree in business administration and, on January 1968, enrolled in the Florida Atlantic University to get a teacher's lesson. After doing so, he briefly held down a teaching job at Plantation High School, but was fired after only a few weeks because, in the principal's words, totally inappropriate behavior. He married in 1968 but divorced after 2 years, his wife citing cruelty as the main reason. In 1971, he got married again, this time to Teresa Dean, a secretary he met while working as a security guard. Schaefer eventually set his mind on becoming a police officer and did get a job as such, in spite of the fact that he failed his psychological test when he applied. He was soon fired for using personal information about female traffic offenders to ask them out for dates. He then moved to Martin County and got another law enforcement job, eventually becoming a deputy sheriff. When he was finally arrested in 1972, in spite of the massive amount of evidence against him, he was only tried for the murders of Place and Jessup. Because he was sentenced to life in prison for the crime, no other charges were pursued since it was enough to keep him away from the public. His wife only visited him once to serve divorce papers. Though he was under close watch, Schiffer still managed to run a mail fraud scheme from his cell, having associates post ads in sex magazines and sending letters to people who replied, always using a female pseudonym. In some correspondence, he pretended to be a 14-year-old girl who offered to send paying customers nude photos of herself. He also enjoyed sending convicts in other prisons letters, pretending to be a woman pursuing a romantic relationship with them, and acted as jailhouse lawyer, using the information he gained from convicts to sell them out to authorities, even getting a murderer sent to death row. Though Schiffer, understandably, was not a well-liked man in prison, he did befriend fellow serial killers Ted Bundy and Otis Toole, and even discussed counter-forensic techniques with the former. Schiffer's behavior easily reminds many people of antisocial personality disorder, short as ASPD, which is a common psychological sickness among many serial killers. Here we raise this question: does Gerard Schiffer really have it? ASPD is a particularly challenging type of personality disorder characterized by impulsive, irresponsible, and often criminal behavior. The main text of DSM-5 defines antisocial personality disorder as being characterized by at least 3 of the following traits: failure to conform to social norms and laws, indicated by repeatedly doing illegal activities; deceitfulness, indicated by continuously lying, using aliases, or conning others for personal gain and pleasure; irritability and aggressiveness, indicated by repeatedly getting into fights or physically assaulting others; irresponsibility, indicated by repeatedly failing to constantly work or honor financial obligations; lack of remorse after hurting or mistreating another person. When we go back to Schiffer's story, we may find the following pattern which fits the descriptions of ASPD. Number 1. Schiffer described his childhood as turbulent and conflictual. His dad was an alcoholic and womanizer, often not home. His parents got divorced eventually. This fits the common pattern of people with ASPD suffering from unstable developmental years. He also considered that he was the unwanted kid of the family. He is quoted as saying, "My father favored my sister, so I wanted to be a girl. I wanted to die. I was such a disappointment to my family as a kid." Number 2. Schiffer showed inappropriate behavior in early stage. He admitted that he killed animals, hunting in the Everglades, where he used to shoot animals that couldn't be consumed. Number 3. If we go through Schiffer's career, we will find that he always looked for positions with authorities and power over people. Teacher, priest, and police officer, he has deep need for control. One of Schiffer's biggest hobbies behind bars was writing more macabre stories, or featured the savage torture and murder of women, some of which was suspected of being real accounts of murders he had committed, and others were grisly fantasies. In one story simply titled Horse, he recounts hanging a prostitute and having sex with her corpse. He recounts fatally stabbing and disemboweling a co-ed during sex. They were often written from the killer's perspective, the killer often a rogue cop just like Schiffer. He also talked about his murder with his jailmates and read his crime fantasies to them again and again until they couldn't bear it. Apparently, he truly enjoyed recalling his crimes and showed no remorse. At the same time, he's also very narcissistic. He was approached by Sandra Landon, who was his girlfriend in high school and later became a true crime author. I am probably at least one of the top SKs of this century. Schaefer bragged in his jailhouse letters to Sandra Landon. I am certainly one of the most interesting and maybe the most articulate and introspective. I am no doubt the most skillful killer. I killed women in all ways from shooting, strangling, stabbing, beheading to odd ways such as drowning, smothering, and crucifixion. One I whipped to death with a strap, another I beat to jelly with a baseball bat while she was hanging by her wrists. One whore drowned in his own vomit while watching me disembowel her girlfriend. I've crucified women, watched the flies work on living cunt flesh, seen gagged women strangled to death on their own vomiters. I've skinned women. I enjoy each and every experience. Number 6. Other than narcissism, Schaefer is also very capricious, often tossed between exaggerating his crimes and denying them. In his letters, Schaefer claimed to have started murdering women as early as 1965 when he was 19. But he also kept denying to have committed murder. One of his explanations for his conviction was that he had been framed by local drugs lords for killing 2 narcotics informants and filed a total of 19 appeals, all of which were turned down. In late 1969, 2 schoolgirls, 9-year-old Peggy Wren and 8-year-old Wendy Stevenson, vanished after being seen in the company of a man fitting Schaefer's description. Schaefer denied being involved when he was publicly accused of the crime, but in a letter to Landon in 1989, he boasted of killing and cannibalizing the 2 children. While in prison, Schaefer confessed that his obsession with female underwear began at the age of 12. Though he privately bragged about killing a lot of women, he pursued countless frivolous lawsuits against people who had publicly called him a serial killer, such as many true crime authors. He also sued FBI veteran Robert Ressler for writing about his case and discussing it during lectures. He once even sued a writer for describing him as overweight. Seems Schaefer is really an antisocial creature. But to be diagnosed as ASPD, the trees must cause dysfunction or distress. Schaefer was able to determine what he was doing was wrong, and he didn't plead insanity in court. Also, compared with the recklessness of ASPD, his behaviors are more based on hate and rage. His main target is women, and his cruel abuse of them seems to be a projection of resentment towards his sister. Schaefer claimed that he's very healthy psychologically in his interview. He also claimed that he used to visit a psychiatrist to cure his sexual deviation, but he was not diagnosed, which makes it a mystery. Maybe we will never know how much he lied about his crimes, but his nature of narcissism is apparent in that video.
It's just not true, see? And I could prove it wasn't true because I had it in my pocket, and I gave it to Schwartz. I said, here's the document. She's not telling the truth. Find out who told her to tell this story.
Although it cannot be confirmed that he has ASPD officially, it is certain that he is a narcissist and a sadist who has many traits of the disorder. In 1989, Sandra Landon got his story published under the title Killer Fiction, which failed commercially but maintains a cult following to this day. She and Schaefer were briefly engaged in 1991, but she broke it off, leaving him for another serial killer. After many years, justice finally came for Schaefer. On December 3, 1995, he was found dead in his cell, stabbed 42 times and his throat slashed. In 1997, Killer Fiction was published again, this time with an additional text by Landon about her experiences with Schaefer and drawings, some of hand undressed women made by Schaefer. The twisted man may be dead, but his work survives as proof of his vicious life. Evil begins when you begin to treat people as things. Terry Pratchett.